On June 28th, Mercury will go retrograde in the sign of Cancer over the same degrees of Cancer that Jupiter went retrograde in November of 2025 and March of 2026. So we'll have the same feel, but through the opposing planet. Mercury and Jupiter are opposing planets. Mercury also stands for Hermes, the messenger of the gods, and Zeus, represented by Jupiter, Hermes being Zeus's son as well. They had a very good relationship. Hermes acted as the messenger between Zeus and the other gods, and he also helped people travel through the underworld to traverse the underworld to the higher realms. Jupiter has gone retrograde through this sign, whatever was happening in your Cancer place. Cancer representing our feelings, how we nurture others, our affection, through affection, our levels of emotional security, the land, our homeland, the traditions of the past, and themes of privacy as well. Face through Jupiter. Jupiter even representing publishing. So we can even see it through our expression, through our emotions. Mercury being represented by Hermes. It's interesting. Now Zeus has completed its retrograde motion. It's almost at the end of Cancer. And before it leaves, it will not make an exact conjunction, but it will still be within an orb of engagement with a conjunction to Mercury before it leaves the sign. It's interesting, considering the mythology as well. It's like father and son are meeting in Cancer in the sign of the home. They're meeting there. Jupiter is giving orders, as Zeus does to Hermes, giving him orders, what he wants, what message he wants the other gods to know, deliver them. Hermes will be the translator, the go-between, transferring the messages. So it's like Zeus is leaving behind orders in Cancer before it leaves, while you make your retrograde Mercury through the sign. These are the tasks, these are the goals. This is what I want you to communicate in this sign. And we can look at it in that way, because as we go through that period, on the 13th of June, we get into the shadow period of Mercury, and these will be the degrees that will be repeated. It starts to get into those degrees of starts the retrograde at 26, and then it goes back down to 16. So we'll be seeing it replay the things from 613 to 628. It's interesting too, because before we get into that, let's talk about the opposing planets here, the Mercury, the Jupiter, what we might have seen before during that period of November to March, and what we could be seeing now. The differences between Mercury and Jupiter. Jupiter is more about higher learning, the wider picture from the bird's eye view, while Mercury is concerned with the daily interactions, the more practical, pragmatic, versus the idealistic and the expansive. So, and now blended in the sign of Cancer, we saw the ideals of how to nurture, how to care, resources within the home, food, discussions about food and the costs of food in the past versus the cost of food now, maybe even deceptions, Jupiter around food, the food prices, the weight, the food labels are incorrect. So it's the ideal and also the past, what things used to be in the past or what they should be versus, what they really are, what the reality of the situation is, how much it really costs on a day-to-day basis. And we've seen that being expressed with this Mercury retrograde. Now we'll be going back over these things, but in more detail. It was expansive. Everyone was speaking about certain topics, especially in regards to food. If we just stay with the food topic, many people talking about that. And it could be perhaps a gathering of that information, gathering it into one piece and making it more powerful. Maybe turning that even into communicating that in a different way. It's in Cancer, so it's communicating that in an emotional way. But more pragmatic. I think really it's a proper gathering of all of the facts and then expressing it. Once Mercury goes direct, expressing it in a clear, concise way, and maybe figuring out what to do about it as well, how to move forward within these situations. It could be about the emotional security as well, the cost to the emotional security now, in terms of food and financial security as well. What it should be, how it should be versus the reality. The expectations that we might have for family, for home life, versus the reality of what we're actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It could be idealizing the past versus what we face now. Beliefs that we might have had about the land. For example, home ownership, and maybe finding out that things are not what they seem in this area, that there's what is really ownership is not ownership. The reality, the cost of the situation. It can be about traditions as well. Maybe wanting to go back to the traditions and then realizing that those traditions would never work in this modern society. The old rules no longer work. And maybe coming to terms with that. Maybe Mercury allowing us to be more movable. Maybe viewing the traditions and taking what the intention, what was valuable about that, maybe the meaning behind those traditions, and then recreating them in practical ways that are more aligned with, our current realities, altering them to fit. It could be beliefs about privacy, how much should be shared versus how much should be kept private. Maybe regretting something that we've shared, Mercury retrograde, maybe saying things that we regret. But this mixture of Jupiter and Mercury together, it's like two heads are better than one. And because they're opposing planets, one is providing what the other cannot. And Jupiter, being Zeus, is like passing that message along to Hermes and telling Hermes, okay, this is what my goal is, and then see what you can accomplish in the real world. It's never actually what the ideal is. But if there's a balance, if we shoot for the moon, then we land on the stars. Something like this. It's can also deal with themes of philosophy and spirituality, our culture. Mercury will also be going through 26 to 16 degrees of Cancer. So he sits on top of Procyon, Castor, Pollux, Propus, and Wasat. And a theme here seems to be emotion and expressing that emotion, expressing anger. I believe it's anger here, expressing anger in maybe careless, violent ways, learning to deal with that in different ways, especially because at the same time, the same day, Mars will have its ingress into Gemini, conjuncting Uranus. And this is also an assertive, aggressive energy. It could be that we're learning how to assert ourselves differently, and that depends on the person, whether it should be more assertive versus less so. You know, maybe it's the right type of assertiveness that we need, one that's maybe more effective. You know, Procyon is the lesser dog star of Sirius. So it's easily angered, it's careless, it's violent. It has willpower though. It can put the thoughts and plans into action. That's exactly what Mercury is doing here in Cancer. It's putting the thoughts and the plans of Jupiter into action here. Especially because Mars will be in Gemini and Mercury rules Gemini. They're learning from each other. Mercury is trying to be more assertive, hanging over these fixed stars about assertive energy. Castor and Pollux, creating through the shadow, through the darkness, we create. Potentially, we can channel that anger through creative means, through productive creative means that can get us somewhere, at least moving the emotion through us. We have to remember with these fixed stars, if we do things impulsively, they don't last, especially with Saturn and Aries. Procyon in particular, dig deeply for knowledge and give freely what is found. That's Mercury as well. That is Jupiter too. And we're reasserting the values here in Cancer, in the home, while also Mars is having an ingress, which expresses our assertive energy where talk meets action. So that assertive energy is changing. That Mars energy is changing. It's also going to be squaring the nodes as well. So it's a fated change to that assertive energy. And that assertive energy can be found in the way that we speak, especially because it's going to be making that conjunction with Uranus in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. So this are the assertive way that we speak. How do we put our plans into action? Where talk meets action. And we will see a change in the masculine energy, Mars. We went through the Venus conjunct Uranus. As Uranus was even making its ingress into Gemini, we had the conjunction with Venus. A change to the feminine. And now we have Mars going through there, a change to the masculine. So this is exciting. And we all have the masculine and feminine within. So it's our assertive energy and how we chase. How do you chase? And Uranus will just change whatever that is. Maybe it will make it more revelatory, that it happens instinctually or intuitively. It feels not of you, but you're moving and you're trusting. Maybe you're moving more independently of Venus, more independently of Mars. That could mean moving more independently of your cravings. Mars can be libidinal pleasures, maybe being ruled by those things, maybe no longer being ruled by them. Maybe being free of them. Also with Venus that had passed, maybe freeing yourself of a female relationship or a need for laziness, Venus.